Hello and welcome everyone to the 9th online gathering of young Theosophists. Before we begin, if we can have a quick Light on the Path themes meditation. So if you're willing, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let us focus on living neither in the present nor the future, but in the eternal. We know that everything around us, except for that interior spark within ourselves, will one day disappear. What is that spark? It's what we are, but if we're honest with ourselves, we don't know what it is yet. So if you can, for the next 30 seconds, focus on that. Okay, if you'd like, you can open your eyes. So all of us here might already be familiar with Light on the Path. If you're not, it takes about 20 minutes to read it, so you could read it. It's said that Light on the Path may have its origins in ancient Egypt, or perhaps hundreds of thousands of years earlier. But that doesn't really matter. What matters is the merit of the text itself, which is self-evident. So what effect has Light on the Path had on the world since 1885? It's hard to say for sure, but some people that it's influenced include Larry Brilliant, who is an American epidemiologist. He's still alive today, and he was the driving force behind the World Health Organization eradicating smallpox in the 1970s, which up until that time killed over 300 million people since 1900. He holds the book in high esteem. Another person is Eugene O'Neill, who was the Nobel Prize winner in 1936 for literature. And yes, I'll speak more slowly. Sorry. I speak fast when I'm nervous. So Eugene O'Neill won the Nobel Prize in literature in 1936. And in the entryway of his house, he had the first 4 aphorisms of Light on the Path written. So every time he left home, every time he came back, that's what he saw. And I'll read those aphorisms for you in a minute. And what those first 4 unnumbered aphorisms are more or less an abbreviation of the rest of the text. So if we can live accordance with the first 4, the rest of the book isn't quite so important. And the intellectual prerequisites for this that Mabel Collins cites are discernment, reason, justice, and honor. So if we have those 4 things, we can begin to study the book, or at least the beginnings of them. So the first unnumbered rule is before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears. And what that says to me is that at any moment in time, if a negative emotion begins to arise within us, whether it's jealousy or depression, fear, or anger, we know beyond the shadow of a doubt at that moment, we're not seeing things as they actually are. And that has practical implications. So when we begin to blow up because something bad happens, we know without a doubt that we're not seeing things clearly. The second unnumbered rule is that before the ear can hear, it will be chasing the pleasures of this world, or lusts, or things like that. The third rule is that before the voice can speak in the presence of the master, it must have lost the ability to wound. And that's saying that from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, our motivation in this life has to be to either help the people around us or to glorify God, or whatever else we want to name it. If we can do that, it'll be impossible for us to hurt anything. And the last one is that before the soul can stand in the presence of the master, its feet must be washed in the blood of the heart. And this is telling us to purge the source of evil that's within us. In an 1889 edition of light on the path, Mabel Collins adds that the source of evil is a sense of separateness, a sense of superiority, and that those produce a sense of self-respect. And again, if we're honest with ourselves, probably every single day, we can see that sense of superiority, that sense of separateness, at least once pop up. I know that we can see it in the people around us. So again, I think it's practical to keep in mind that the source of evil is within all of us right here, right now. We're not better than anyone else. And it's not bleak. Knowing that, we can fight against it. And now that that introduction of the book is out of the way, we'll go on to the real reason we're here, which are the panelists. And covering part 1, aphorisms 1 through 12, is Iván Garnacho Alonso, who is a native of Valladolid in Spain and is therefore Castilian. He's passionate about music and art. He has been running his own musical instrument shop for 9 years, and he is a composer and producer since an early age. He has been practicing meditation and Tai Chi for more than 20 years. And in all this approach to self-knowledge, he has also been interested for years in literature of a spiritual nature. He entered the Spanish section of the Theosophical Society in August of 2018. And always listening to the path of the heart, he claims to have reached theosophy seeking discernment, only to later discover that he had not even gone through the previous steps of knowledge and ignorance. So welcome, Iván.
Hi, good day to all. Today we will try to discern some of the meanings that Mabel Collins offers us in the text. Now the rules, we can start the game. And the game begins by asserting. One moment. For all disciples, attend you to them. One, kill out ambition. Kill out ambition. What does ambition mean? Ambition is intense and desire to achieve something difficult to perform. The text does not say to observe or to hold it. It says to kill it. It's coming to reflect. Slow. Two, say, kill out desire of life. Kill out desire of life. What does desire mean? Desire is interest of or desire that a person has to get the possession of or realization of something. The text does not say to observe life or to kill life. It says to kill desire. it's convenient to reflect. Slowly, in the timing. 3 says, kill out desire of comfort. Kill out desire of comfort. What does comfort mean? Comfort is a state that provides a feeling of satisfaction and tranquility. The text does not say to end of comfort. It says to kill the desire for comfort. It's a step, minimum step. It's convenient to reflect. Or say, work as those work who are ambitious. Respect life as those do who desire it. Be happy as those are who live for happiness. Seek in the heart the source of evil and expurge it. It lives fruitfully in the heart of the devoted disciple, as well as in the heart of the man of desire. Only the strong can kill it out. The weak must wait for its growth. It's Christian. It's there. And it's a plant that lives and increases throughout the ages. It flowers when the man has accumulated into himself innumerable existences. He who will enter upon the path of power must tear this thing out of his heart. And then the heart will bleed, and the whole life of the man seems to be utterly dissolved. This ordeal must be endured. It may come at the first step of the perilous ladder, which leads to the path of life. It may not come until the last. But, O disciple, remember that it has to be endured, and fasten the energies of your soul upon the task. Live neither in the present nor the future, but in the eternal. This young wheat cannot flower there. This blood upon existence is whipped out by the very atmosphere of eternal thought. The text tells us about working in depth, with fervor, with a constant thought of the eternal. Also about pulling the root of evil from our heart, which is ambition, desire, and egoism. It is convenient to reflect slowly, very slowly. in depth. 5 says, kill out all sense of separateness. Kill out all sense of separateness. The text talks about killing the feeling that we are two or thousands. We are one with everything. And perhaps by getting rid of that feeling, we will be able to glimpse that consciousness of liberation. Six, say, kill out desire for sensation. Kill out desire for sensation. What is the feeling? The sensation is the impression that external stimuli produce on the conscience, and that is picked up by one of the senses. The text does not say to annihilate the sensation, but to kill the desire for sensation. Seven say, kill out the hunger for growth. Kill out the hunger for growth. What is growth? Growth is the increase in quantity, size, intensity, or importance of something or someone. Killing the thirst for growth may mean annihilating the subtle ambition to grow for the something else of the ego. One more step. Eight, say, yet stand alone and isolated, because nothing that is embodied, nothing that is conscious of separation, nothing that is out of the eternal can aid you. Learn from sensation and observing, because only so can you commence the science of self-knowledge and plant your foot on the first step of the ladder. Grow as the flower grows unconsciously, but keep your life anxious to open its soul up to the egg. So must you press forward to open your soul to the eternal. But it must be the eternal that draws forth your strength and beauty, no desire of growth. For in the one case, you develop in the luxuriance of purity. In the other, you harden by the forcible passion for personal stature. Nine say, Desire only that which is within you. Desire only that which is within you. What is in you? Good question, right? Good question. Desire only what is in you, not what is in others or in the rest. Embrace what is in you and accept what is in the others. It is not so different from what is in you, has been or will be. Then say, desire only that which is beyond you. Desire only that which is beyond you. What is out of your reach? What can you touch, see, hear, smell, taste, or perceive? Only that brings it to your state, to your meditation, to your experience. Then say, desire only that which is unattainable. Desire only that which is unattainable. What is unaffordable for us? Perhaps at the moment, having everything is unaffordable for us. Working with the only desire for the eternal is perhaps the most straightforward way to recognize it in ourselves. 12 say, for within you is the light of the world, the only light that can be set upon the path. If you are unable to perceive it within you, it is useless to look for it elsewhere. It is beyond you, because when you reach it, you have lost yourself. It is unattainable, because it forever recedes. You will enter the light, but you will never touch the flame. You is the light of the world. Incur and travel the thousand paths, always towards your knowledge. Because in the light, the illusory idea of individuality and separateness disappears. Thanks.
Thank you, Iván. Our next speaker is covering part 1, aphorisms 13 through 21. And that is Rafael Marques to Albuquerque. He works as a lecturer in the University of Val do Itajaí in Brazil, is a doctor in education from the University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom, has a bachelor and master in design from the Federal University of Santa Catarina in Brazil. and is currently working as the president of Florianopolis Theosophical Lodge in Brazil and director of the youth movement in the Theosophical Society in Brazil. He's been a TS member since 2012 and a Buddhist since 2015.
So hello to everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and not only because I'm one of the organizers of those events, but also because I consider Light on the Path one of the most important writings that we have in the Theosophical movement. And the reason I really like this book is that I find it a very practical book in the sense of a very powerful tool of self-transformation. So if someone is coming to the Theosophical Society and is finding it very theoretical and is finding valuable the philosophy of life that it can provide, perhaps at some point, the next step is to go very deep in the process of self-transformation. And Light on the Path is perhaps one of the most powerful tools that we have. I have only a few notes on the book as a whole before I go into my aphorisms. So the first point that I would like to emphasize is that Light on the Path is a book to meditate rather than just study. So of course you have to study and understand its proposal, but at the same time, the way that you should really use it is meditating upon the aphorisms. And my suggestion would be that you do it when you are emotionally and intellectually prepared. So emotionally, because it can be very deep and self-transformation is often not easy. So if you are emotionally unstable, or if you're going through some hardship, perhaps it's not the right moment to engage in this kind of process. And intellectually, because you have to really understand what the book is about. So one of the ways to really understand what the book is about is to read the commentaries. So I would recommend that people read one or two, at least, books of commentaries before you go into the meditation on the book itself. And here are 3 commentaries that I checked to prepare this short presentation. The first one is Seek Out a Way by Rohit Mehta. That's a very short book and it's very inspired. I really like Rohit Mehta and has a very meditative approach. The second one that I have here is Entering in the Sacred Path by Joy Mills. Is a bit longer and it's very explanatory, very clear, and she's very kind of systematic in how she explains, so it's really good as well. And the last one, and certainly more traditional, is Talk on the Path of Occultism, Volume 3 by Annie Besant and Leadbeater. They have one of these to each of the 3 little books of the Theosophical movement. And the volume 3 is about Light on the Path. It's a bit longer, it's more extensive commentaries from both authors, and it's a more, let's say, classical commentary on that. And my recommendation, and when I say recommendation is because that's what I have done, so I find it a good idea, but I'm not saying that's wrong to do in any other way. But my recommendation would be to meditate on each group of 3 original aphorisms, plus the commentaries of the masters of that group of 3. So if you check, most of the Light on the Path comes into groups of 3 aphorisms that are the original text, and then there's a 4th sort of aphorism that is the commentary of a master, and then there are some extra notes from a second master. So my suggestion would be to meditate upon the group, each of the groups of 3 with the commentaries. And the commentaries are very important because if you take an aphorism by itself, it can be very misleading. So that would be my kind of generic comment before we go into my aphorisms. So my part comes into 2 groups of 3 aphorisms each with the comments, and there is an extra alone aphorism at the end. So the first one are these: desire power ardently, desire peace fervently, and desire possessions above all. and they can be very misleading because they seem to be very kind of mundane, but we have to keep in mind all the time that we are talking in a kind of selfless perspective. So what they would mean, and the commentaries say that, as the power that you should seek or desire is also a power to remain humble and to look like nothing in the eyes of others. So it's not like the power of a hero, but it's more like the power of an anonymous hero. So it's not to have this feeling of you are so great. And the peace that it's meaning here is the inner peace that allows your soul to grow. So if you study the techniques of meditation, you might learn the concept of shamatha. That's in Buddhism. The shamatha is basically the serenity of mind. And it's said in the Buddhist tradition that unless you have a certain degree of shamatha or serenity of mind, you cannot really access the secrets or the depths. So you really need this inner peace. And desire possessions above all, but it's very clear that the possessions are collective, they are for everyone, are of a higher level. It's not individual possessions. So what we have here in this set of aphorisms is that we have in the beginning, the part that Iván covered, and Joy Muse have this idea very clear, that in the beginning, the aphorisms are more about the parts that you should destroy of yourself, the parts that you should remove. It's a purification process. Whereas when we come to the second half of the first part, that's my part, it's more about what you should develop. So it's a positive now approach rather than a negative like in the beginning. We could compare this in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali with the yamas in the beginning, that are the things that should not do, or the kind of purification processes, and then it comes the niyamas, the parts that you should develop in a more active, positive way. And Joy Muse also makes an extra comment here of correspondences that I find useful. She would say that the power is associated with divine will or Atman. So when it says desire power ardently, that would mean basically to align your will to the superior power that's Atman, that's a higher spirit. She would say that desire peace fervently, that would be the peace of Buddhi. And desire possessions above all, that would be the in the level of the higher manas, the higher mind, or the human soul, as Blavatsky would say. So that's the part that reincarnates from one life to the other. So she's basically saying that all these things that you should develop in those aphorisms are basically talking about Atma Buddhi Manas, is the higher part of yourself that you should develop. And Rohit Mehta reminds us that words like ardently, fervently, and above all, they suggest the great energy that's needed in this process while you are unmoved. So this book, like other books that are talking about deep parts of the spiritual process, they are talking about paradoxes or things that look like paradoxes in the first glance. So what we in here we have the beginning of that, because we see that we need great energy, but at the same time we need great serenity and the capacity to remain in peace. So that's kind of the beginning. It's not, if you don't have lots of energy, you are probably going to fall asleep when you meditate, and this whole process of the light and the path can be interpreted basically as a process of meditation. So the next ones are these here: seek out the way, seek the way by retreating within, and seek the way by advancing boldly without. And here I have an image that illustrates the moment that's described in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna is talking to Krishna. And I find it very illustrative because one of the things that is said is that Krishna says to Arjuna that you have to act in the world. It's not only about doing yoga and stuff, you have to do action in the world. So I find it very representative of this aphorism that say the spiritual path is both outwards and inwards. But Joymius compares what's being said here to the concept of the bodhisattva in the Buddhism. So the bodhisattva ideal, it contains these contradictions of in and out in the spiritual path. So normally we say that the bodhisattva ideal is to seek enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So enlightenment we consider to be something as like an internal state, whereas for the sake of all beings means that you are acting externally for everyone. And also the bodhisattva is considered to have the perfect wisdom that we could consider like an internal thing, the direct perception of reality, and at the same time the perfect compassion. In other words, the capacity to act for others in the external world. And it has to mingle together in a perfect way, the two aspects. And also in the perfections or paramitas that are the qualities of the bodhisattva, we also have some that are more internal and some that are more external. Like retreating within, we could say that sila or virtue, shanti or patience, and dhyana, meditation, tend to be more internal. And then you have things that are more like advancing without, like dana or generosity towards others, vidya or energy when acting, and pranya, that is wisdom applied to the world. So the process of searching for the way is basically understanding that we have to find this path that just mingles the paradoxes. And it also emphasizes lots of other things. I have very short time here, but it also reminds us that it has to be a complete way. We need devotion, we need meditation, we need study, and we need service. And then finally here, we have this last aphorism of the first part that says, look for the flower to bloom in the silence that follows the storm, not till then. This is a very special aphorism because it marks when the flower blooms. And what does it mean? Well, what is happening here is that the end of the first part of the Light in the Path is describing the actually beginning of the real spiritual path, when you have actually found the path, when you set your foot strongly in the spiritual path and you're not just fooling around. So that's the deep process of self-transformation that marks this moment. That's what's described when we say that the flower blooms. It's described to be as this mysterious event that happens towards in the life of the aspirant. It can be considered the moment of spiritual awakening, the true one, of knowledge and also of certainty, is when you begin to be certain of the path of what you're doing and where you have to go. It's also described as the entrance in the hall of learning. That's also a concept that appears in the voice of the silence. The entrance of the hall of learning is when we leave the first hall that's considered to be the hall of ignorance or the hall of sorrow. That's the hall in which most of the population is all the time. That's the state of mind that most of the population is most of the time. So when you enter in the hall of learning, that's when the flower blooms. And that's when the spiritual path, the real one, actually begins. It's also associated to the hearing of the voice of the silence. That's the kind of the mysterious intuition process that tends to appear very clearly here. And it's also said that when the lamp is now lit. And Leadbeater, in his commentary, he also says that this process is associated to what's called the first initiation, and compares it to the moment when the eggshell is broken by the little bird inside. So it's a very continuous process, you know, the growth of the bird, but then when it actually breaks the shell, that marks a new stage. And so what we have here is the culmination of a long preparation of 20 aphorisms that culminates in the awakening that will prepare the person to continue the path in the second part that we have in the next speakers. I have here 2 quotes just to end. I'm sorry I exploded the time a bit. The first one is a quote of Subaru from his esoteric writings. He's described the process in other words, but I believe that's kind of the same thing, the same kind of process, and that's why I find it useful. He says, the voice comes to you all of a sudden when you do not expect it, and gives you important directions. It tells you the inmost nature of your logos, points out from what ray you have sprung, and tells you what ray you are to proceed to. Up to the time of the sounding of the voice, the mode of procedure is common to all people. The special directions for each particular ray are given by the voice. So that's kind of similar to what's also said in the commentaries on the light and the path. And just to end my short speak, I'd like to read a section of The Voice of the Silence that H.P. Blavatsky published, because it's a moment in the beginning of the book in which she also uses the metaphor of the flower that blooms after the storm. And I think we can make a very clear comparison between the 2 moments. So it says, the rose must re-become the bud born of its parent's stem before the parasite has eaten through its heart and drunk its life sap. The golden tree puts forth its jeweled buds before its trunk is withered by the storm. The pupil must regain the child state he has lost ere the first sound can fall upon his ear. The light from the one master, the one unfading golden light of spirit, shoots its effulgent beams on the disciple from the very first. But, O disciple, unless the flesh is passive, head cool, the soul as firm and pure as flaming diamond, the radiance will not reach the chamber. Its sunlight will not warm the heart, nor will the mystic sounds of the Akashic heights reach the ear. Unless thou hearest, thou canst not see. Unless thou seest, thou canst not hear. To hear and see, this is the second stage. So thank you, and let's go to the second part of the book.
Thank you for that, Rafael. Beginning the second part of the book is Pauline Van Tol, covering aphorisms 1 through 12. Pauline was interested in religion and spirituality from a young age. Raised with the Christian beliefs from her parents, she used to visit the church and participated in Bible study groups as a child. However, in her teenage years, her interest in other types of religion and spirituality rose. In her years at the university, she saw posters of lectures in Theosophy on the wall of the university buildings and first attended these. Next to her courses in psychology, she then decided to take courses in other world religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism. With a group of students from her student association, she also visited religious temples and other places and organized talks with people having different spiritualities. Later on in life, she would become more interested in esotericism, and next to keeping her study in Theosophy, also went to study with Rosicrucians for several years. At the moment, she is a member of the Nijmegen Theosophical Lodge in the Netherlands and is working as a PhD researching ways to improve social care within local governments in the Netherlands.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. How can I remove the gallery view of the other?
Oh, we can't see it. It looks good.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm going too quick. Okay. So I will give you my reflection on the book, The Light and the Path, especially the second part of the book. But before I start, I would like to reflect on the path itself. So the title of the book is Light on the Path. But what are we talking about here? What is the path? So in my view, the path can be seen as a metaphor for an inner journey, a journey that leads to awareness and to renewal. And on that journey, as a result of knowledge and experiences and reflections and inner knowing, man develops a wider understanding of himself and of the world. And through that awareness, he or she becomes receptive to energies with a higher frequency that will transform him or her. So the one who arrives is therefore different from the one who left. And as you can see in this image, after the abyss, so the darkness that the pilgrim has to go through, there's a metamorphosis, a transformation. And from this transformation, a blessing is received. So what we're talking about is a path of transformation. And it is expressed in myths and in scriptures and stories. For example, it is expressed in the story of the exodus of the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt through the Red Sea and to the Promised Land. It is expressed by the life of Jesus from his birth in Bethlehem to his death at Golgotha. The path is also expressed by medieval novels about knights in search of the Holy Grail. And it is also expressed in the journey of Dante in the Divine Comedy. And the path is also expressed in the mystery road of 7 days that Christian Rosicrucius goes to attend the alchemical wedding between the queen and the king. So these are all stories about the path, about the inner journey that we have to take as a human being. So the stories about the path are all around us, but only for the people who can truly hear and can truly see with the inner senses and already have prepared themselves to a certain extent as to be able to resonate with this esoteric truth. So now that we know what the path means, we can take a look at the book, The Light on the Path. So the book consists of 2 parts. So the first part we have already discussed. It is about the preparation for and discovery of the path. And the second part is about treating the path. And in the first part, so you had these 4 aphorisms which prepared the pilgrim to reach the door, the threshold of initiation. And so Mabel Collins says that these 4 aphorisms are the most important texts of the whole book. And all the other texts in the book are less important because these 4 aphorisms formulate the laws of our transformation into this new human being. And the other texts have only meaning when we have transformed ourselves and have developed our inner or astral senses. So the message of these 4 rules is that to be able to treat the path, we have to purify our minds and have to develop our inner seeing, our inner hearing, and inner speaking. And Rohit Mehta calls it loneliness. He says, loneliness is a state in which the mind has nothing to hold on to. And we can stand in the presence of the master only in the moment of the present, when we are utterly alone, having removed from our feet the dust of past memories. Being purified due to a complete separation from our own psychological past as well as future, we are enabled to stand in the presence of the master. So in this preparation phase, we have to undo ourselves, especially our mind, from all the dust that is built during our past and all our conditioning related to our thoughts and feelings and emotions. And we have to free ourselves from that so that inner harmony can be attained. And after this whole struggle that our mind has been through and all the internal conflict, which might take many, many lives to work through, there will come a moment of utter peace and utter silence. And from this moment of silence, a voice will arise. And Mabel Collins then says, out of the silence that is peace, a resonant voice shall arise. And this voice will say, it is not well, thou hast reaped, now thou must sow. And knowing this voice to be the silence itself, thou wilt obey. So it is clear that something is still missing here. So the mind is purified, but it is not filled yet with this other consciousness, the divine consciousness. And she actually explains that in the rules that follow, where she says, stand aside in a coming battle, and though thou fightest, be not thou the warrior. Look for the warrior and let him fight in thee. Take his orders for battle and obey them. And obey him not as though he were a general, but as though he were thyself. And his spoken words were the utterance of thy secret desires. For he is thyself, yet infinitely wiser and stronger than thyself. So Mabel Collins here speaks about a fighter and a warrior, but what does she mean by that? And Rohit Mehta says in his book Seek Out a Way, he says a fighter is an agent, a channel of the warrior, and the warrior is a transcendental reality or truth, while the fighter represents that mind of man. So the fighter is our own imperfect consciousness, while the warrior is the divine consciousness or reality or truth. And our imperfect consciousness, although we can develop and expand this, we can never reach to what is called truth or reality. And for that reason, with our limited perception, we will never truly succeed. Because Rohit Mehta then says, the mind can formulate a problem, but cannot solve it. So if we do not look for the warrior, but fight the battle on the strength of our own limited perception, we are sure to lose the battle. We fail again and again in the battles of life, because instead of acting as fighters, we arrogate to ourselves the role of warrior. So we should look out for the warrior, become an instrument for the warrior, and let him fight in us. So that is the message. We have to let the warrior fight in us, so this other consciousness. And there are three things important here when treating the path, before we can let this warrior fight in us. And the first is surrender. And the second is to stay focused and prepared. And the third is to obey the inner warrior. And I will explain these one by one. So the first, surrender, is explained by the first rule of the second part of the book, Light on the Path, in which Mabel Collins says, stand aside in the coming battle, and though thou fightest, be not thou the warrior. And so Rohit Mehta also says this, because Rohit Mehta says the readiness of the disciple consists in his complete self-surrender, which verily is the state in which he discovers the master. Thus, from that moment onwards, the master walks with the disciple. So we have to completely self-surrender. But what does that mean? It means surrender of our own mind as the problem solver and fulfiller of her needs. He says, as long as the mind visualizes possibilities of conscious effort with reference to a problem, so long the warrior must remain undiscovered. It is only when the struggles of the mind in the direction of success, continuity, and security have ceased that the warrior can be discovered. So we have to begin to understand that our mind, how much we want to make it perfect and develop it, could never bring us to the ultimate reality or truth. And it is actually quite similar to what is written in the Bible in Mark 8, verse 35, in which is said, "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life will save it." Or in John 3, verse 30, "He must become greater, and I must become less." So that is the first thing important when treating the path, self-surrender. And the second thing that is important when treating the path is to stay focused and be constantly prepared. Because Mabel Collins then says in the second rule, she says, "Look for the warrior and let him fight in thee." And she explains this later on, where she says, "Look for him, else in the fever and hurry of the fight thou mayest pass him, and he will not know thee unless thou knowest him. And if thy cry meet his listening ear, then will he fight in thee, and fill the dull void within. But if thou look not for him, if thou pass him by, then there is no safeguard for thee, and thy brain will reel, thy heart grow uncertain, and in the dust of the battlefield, thy sight and senses will fail, and thou wilt not know thy friends from thy enemies." So what Mabel Collins here says is that the looking for the warrior has to be all the time. If we lose sight of him, even for a moment, confusion and chaos will arise in the battles of life. And this is also said by Rhoda. His mind, emotions, and senses have to be alert in order to catch the faintest whisper in the midst of surrounding darkness. In no part of his being can a spiritual pilgrim afford to be asleep. He has to keep a constant vigil throughout the night, and not a wink of sleep is possible on the brink of the precipice where he stands. In front of the unattainable, which is the unknown, man must be wide awake in all parts of his nature. And it actually reminds me of a parable from the Bible, and I would like to share this with you. It is the parable of the 10 virgins, and it is quite similar to what Road Mita says. So the parable goes as follows. At the time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. And the foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. And the wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. And the bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. And at midnight a cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both of us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrives, and virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. And later the others also came. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the hour, the day or the hour." So what it learns us is that we have to keep our focus on the divine consciousness and make sure that we're constantly prepared to be touched by it. But this is not the end of the process for treating the path. As Mabel Collins also says, take his orders for battle and obey them. And obey him not as though you were a general, but as though he were thyself, and his spoken words were the utterance of thy secret desires. For he is thyself, yet infinitely wiser and stronger than thyself. So the third thing we have to do before treating the path is to carry out the orders of the warrior and not our own orders. So in daily life, we have to act, but the action will be right only when we are not the actor, but only an instrument, a channel. And it's a channel of the warrior who is us, but who is infinitely wiser and stronger than us. And the inner warrior can be recognized by a melody in our heart. And it is the song of life, says Mabel Collins, a melody of faith, hope, and love. And Rohit Mehta says about this, hearing this melody, when God, truth, or master is the actor and mind the instrument, then there is produced an exquisitely beautiful song of life. And it is when we cease to play our tune, but only provide an instrument, that the master musician can manifest himself as divine harmony through us. But why is listening to this melody in the heart so important? Why do we have to listen to this melody? And Rohit Mehta then goes on to say, in treating the path, he must know the right relationship between the various parts of his subjective and objective environment. But the parts cannot be perfectly related, so long as the whole has not been comprehended. So the neophyte must therefore listen to the melody of life, and from it learn the lesson of harmony. And success on the path depends entirely upon the harmony or perfect relationship between the parts. And to establish harmony is to know what right action is in the midst of ever-changing psychological settings. And it is only as man listens to the promptings of his heart, as a response to the whisper of the soul, that he perceives what right action is from moment to moment. So listening to the melody of the heart is therefore important to attain inner harmony, and to know the right actions one has to take. And I think this links very well to a famous concept in Taoism, which is Wu Wei. And Wu Wei means action of non-action, literally non-doing. And it is an important concept of Taoism and means natural action. Or in other words, action that does not involve struggle or excessive effort. And Wu Wei is the cultivation of a mental state in which our actions are quite effortlessly in alignment with the flow of life. And this going with the flow, although it may be greatly productive, is characterized by a great ease where we spontaneously act perfectly. And this means that we do the right thing effortlessly and spontaneously without trying. And it is beautifully expressed by the words of Lao Tzu. So nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Or by the words in the Tao Te Ching, without leaving his door, he knows everything under heaven. Without looking out of his window, he knows all the ways of heaven. For the further one travels, the less one knows. And therefore the sage arrives without going, sees all without looking, and does nothing, yet achieves everything. But what then has the pilgrim achieved by treading the path? It is the great metamorphosis, or what is called in the Gnostic tradition, the process of transfiguration, which has now begun. And whoever has experienced this inner center of power in himself, this melody of the heart, and makes this the guiding principle in his life, He stands at the beginning of the process of transfiguration. And this is the great metamorphosis of the spirit, the soul, and the body. And the old mortal personality makes room for a new soul development, step by step, that is nourished by entirely different powers. And they are no longer powers of the old ego, but forces originating from the field of immortal life. And during this process of transfiguration, mortal man is taken up and into a new spiritual awareness. And it is like is said in Galatians 2, verse 20, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the horizontal bar of the cross refers to the life in this world, what we know so well. And the vertical bar, it refers to the influx of the Gnosis light, which sets before us and makes possible the divine plan. And at the meeting point of the two beams, the rose unfolds as a symbol of the spirit spark in our heart, and which can speak to us via this song of life, as Mabel Collins calls it. And it is this melody that we have to follow, and that will make sure that we follow the right path. And in this way, we are able to continue a transformation process. And I will end with my favorite quote of one of my favorite philosophers, which is Joseph Campbell. And although I don't know if he was a Theosophist, I think he truly understood what the path is all about. And he calls it the hero path. And he says, we have not even to risk the adventure alone. For the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is the road known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. And where we are thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. And where we are thought to travel, and where we are thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. And where we are thought to travel outwards, we shall come to the center of our own existence. And where we are thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline, for our third excellent speech today. The last panelist that we have today is Stephanie Vargas, and she is a telecommunications engineer and master in project management. She's been in the Theosophical Society for more than 10 years and is a member of Lodge Paz, which means peace in English, from La Paz, Bolivia. She's a volunteer in the Virtual Center of Theosophical Studies Spanish section, and now she wants to focus on serving and promoting theosophy.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, so continuing with the second part, the number 13, it says, speech comes only with knowledge. Attain to knowledge and you will attain to speech. Here, speech is meant in the language of mysticism, the power of helping others. And the note goes, it is impossible to help others till you have obtained some certainty of your own. To understand this, we can name an analogy. And it says, if you want to lift a person out of stormy waters, your own feet must be on the rock. So it will be impossible for a man to help others along the line of higher development unless he knew for himself. And continue, the note is, when you have learned the first 21 rules and have entered the hall of learning with your powers developed and sense unchanged, then you will find there is a found within you from which speech will arise. When we have the knowledge and some touch of personal experience, we find that there is a found of speech which arises within us. We feel we have something different to say, something which we must say, which is laid upon us as a charge that we should give to the world. After the 13th rule, I can add no words to what is already written. My peace I give unto you. These notes are written only for those whom I give my peace, those who can read what I have written with the inner as well as the outer sense. So here ended the comments for the rules. And continuing with the 14, it says, having obtained the use of the inner senses, having conquered the desires of the outer senses, having conquered the desires of the individual soul, and having obtained knowledge, prepare now, O disciple, to enter upon the way in reality. The path is found. Make yourself ready to treat it. So it seems strange when we are past the middle of the second part of this book to be told only now are we entering upon the way in reality. It is, of course, a higher stage of the way that is referred to, just as we speak of the probationary path first, and then the path proper after the first initiation has been passed. So here speaks of entering upon the way in reality, and the same idea is applicable at different levels. The full adept enters a yet higher path as still for fuller reality. How to walk in the path, which each man has to find out for himself. He can only know only treading the path. Now, here we have the next three aphorisms, which are the following. It's the 15th. Inquire the air and the water of the secret they hold for you. The development of your inner senses will enable to do this. Sorry. Okay. So here we're talking about the nature, right? We have to come into closer communion with nature if we want really to understand her. All religions, so far as we know, have a theory of cosmogony and of the way in which the world is, or the solar system came into being. So there is a reason for that. It has been strongly impressed by the world teacher upon the sub-races of people who came at different times, that they should try to understand the universe of which they form a part. So the more we understand of the whole plan of evolution, the more we can live in harmony with it, and became able to work with even in really detail. The numbers 16 is inquire of the holy ones of the earth, of the secrets they hold for you. Annie Besson and Lee Vider, in their comments of this rule, they say the holy ones are our masters. They say that in the moment that we are in touch with them, with our master, they're a different way to counsel And it's not always to make a question. This goes to a higher plane, and we have received the answer in the right moment. They say, thus there are ways of consulting the master without troubling him at all. Still, there are other cases where that is not a suitable method of communication, where we have absolutely to wait for an opportunity to ask a question and get an answer. But certainly, in order that one may inquire of them, he must first of all bring himself to the point where he will cause no disturbance in coming near to them. And in order to do that, we have to conquer the desire of the other senses, and then we give us the right to do that, to get in touch with our master. The number 17, it says, inquire of the inmost, the one of its final secret, which it holds for you through the ages. The great and difficult victory, the conquering of the desires of the individual soul, is a work of ages. Therefore, accept no to obtain its reward until ages of experience has been accumulated. When the time of learning this seventh rule is reached, man is on the threshold of becoming more than a man. So the final secret is discovered from moment to moment, as each moment brings a new psychological setting. Now, to know the final secret is to comprehend what right action is at each moment. The inmost, the one, will reveal to us the secret as we inquire from it. And in the light of this secret, we should be enabled to perceive what right action is with reference to a problem or a situation. Continuing with the number 10, it says, the knowledge which is now yours is only yours because your soul has become one with all pure souls and with the inmost. It is a trust vested in you by the Most High. Betray it, misuse your knowledge, or neglect it, and it is possible even now for you to fall from the high states you have attained. Great one falls back even from the threshold, unable to sustain the weight of their responsibility, unable to pass on. Therefore, look forward always with awe and trembling to this moment, and be prepared for the battle. Now, this rule 18, it's more than a comment by the Chahan. So it warns the aspirant never to lose his caution and watchfulness, but always to be afraid of himself. Therefore, we shall do well to heed the warning and not too soon think that we are safe from attacks of selfishness. That is only feather that can hold us back, but it has many forms and is very subtle. The spiritual path is indeed dangerous, compared as sharp as the edge of a razor. So such are the complications of the paths that one must be constantly checking its course. It is the neophyte is exposed to get the path wrong and to get lost between the second paths. Okay, the number 19, it says, it's reading that for him who is on the threshold of divinity, no law can be framed, no guide can exist. So at this point, the need for external teaching ceases to exist absolutely for the disciple. Has read the book of nature and the planes of human evolution. He is at the point to conquest of the last feather, which is avidya, the ignorance. Henceforth, the law of his life comes utterly from within himself. But we'll continue. Yet to enlighten the disciple, the final struggle might be thus expressed, and it has the last three aphorisms. It says, hold fast to that which has neither substance nor existence. Listen only to the voice which is soundless, and look only on that which is invisible, alike to the inner and the outer sense. To meditate in this or to explain this, I like to read from Rohit Mehta, the book Seek Out the Way. And for this part, especially I like it, so I like to share it with you. It says, now existence is that which is manifested. It refers to something that is concrete, while substance is the idea, the archetype. It refers to that which is abstract. The first of these aphorisms, therefore, says, hold neither to the thing nor to the idea of the thing. What is there to hold is both the concrete as well as the abstract are put aside. The mind cannot visualize any state which is neither concrete nor abstract. It is like asking it to stand where no space exists. The concrete and the abstract are indeed the two extremes. The mind jumps one to another. And what does holding fast to that which is neither concrete nor abstract mean? It is explained in the next aphorism, which says, listen to the voice which is soundless. This refers to the awareness of the interval that exists between two sounds. It being aware of this interval that we shall is by discover the point of balance, the point of perfect voice. This idea is further explained in the third and the fifth aphorism, which says, look only on that which is invisible, alike to the inner and the outer sense. It is sometimes believed that a man will discover the point of voice by transferring his attention from visible to the invisible planes. But the point of balance is not on the invisible planes any more than on the visible. It is not by developing clairaudience or clairaudience that man can come to the spiritual insight. The aphorism very clearly states that one has to look on that which is invisible both to the outer as well as the inner sense. The neophyte is asked to look at that which is visible neither to the sense nor to the mind. It is that which the mind cannot comprehend. Not in realms of the mind can the secret of treading the path be understood. The mind knows only the path of extremes. It is concrete, is the night. If it's concrete, is the night. Then it climbs to the abstract. If the invisible is to be rejected, it holds fast to the invisible. It is the moment of the opposites, which leads a man away from the path. It is on the middle path that man can walk with firm but humble steps. It is the treading of the middle path, which is the final secret conveyed to the neophyte by the inmost, the one. And end up with the peace be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So now we'll end our YouTube transmission so that we can have a lower key, quick discussion with the panelists.